Now that we have the lay of the land with the different types that are available in Python, we'll start going into more detail about each type. And we'll split this up so we'll have some different content. We're not just talking about data types endlessly, but I'd like to start by talking about strings. So a string, as we've seen, is a sequence of characters enclosed in quotation marks. And these can be what we call single quotes, which are really just apostrophes, or double quotes, which are quotation marks. And as we've seen before, the quotation marks themselves are not part of the string. Now we can have short strings in Python which fit on one line. So this is an example of what we'd call a short string. We can also have long strings which span multiple lines, but in order to do that, we need to use what we call triple quotes, which are 3 quotation marks. We would get an error if we just tried to use a single quotation mark here. You can see already that the syntax highlighting here is kind of broken. This is red text indicated that it's a string, and this is not. So we really do need the 3 quotation marks for a multi-line string in this way. Now, one interesting thing we can do is add strings together. And so I'm going to go ahead and run this code here, and we're running s1 plus s2 plus s3 and printing it out to the string. And you can see that what this does is it takes s1 and it tacks on s2, and then it tacks on s3 to the end of that. So we're just basically appending strings and creating one mega string here. And then when we print s4, we can see that we have our multiple lines of text. Now, strings have useful operators and methods. So we're doing another sort of funky operation here where we're multiplying the character string abc dash by 3, and then we're adding to it xyz. So we've already seen what addition does to strings, and we might be able to extrapolate from that multiplication will repeat strings multiple times. So if we run this and then ignore the rest of this code for now, just look at the output here, we can see that indeed abc dash times 3 is abc dash abc dash abc dash, and then when we add xyz, that gets tacked on to the end. Now there's also a method called split, which we can use to split a string of characters into a list of strings. And so when we split this character string by the character dash, we get all of the strings less the dash in a list format. So that's a very useful method. There's also a method for strings called .upper, which converts all of the characters to uppercase. And similarly, there's the .lower. And then strings also have a length. A string is a sequence of characters, and so we can use len of the string to get the number of characters it contains. This is actually just a Python function. This doesn't follow the same syntax as these other methods here. These are methods of the string object, and len applies to multiple types of objects. You can use len on any iterable, it's called. So like the length of this list would be the number of elements in this list, and the length of a character string is the length of the number of elements in that string, the number of characters. So this applies more broadly, and that's why it's not using the same dot notation. But there's also a method called count, which counts the number of occurrences of a given character in a string. Now, of course, you can't be expected to know all of the things that you can do with a string, or any other data type in Python for that matter, and that's where that help function comes into play. And so the type for a string is str. We saw that earlier when we saw that when we run type on a string, it gives us class str. And so if we run help on str, it will show us all of the information on strings. And so this has a bunch of methods in it. Methods are functions that act on data. Again, we'll see these as we get into classes more later. And this tells us everything we can do with a string. So for example, we have count. And we saw this before in our example here, to count the number of occurrences of a given character. And this gives you help on how this works. So s.count is like your string object.count. and then you're looking for a substring, this is called. So we're looking for instances of A in this example, and then we have some optional parameters here for start and end, which let you slice this string into like a smaller portion. We'll see that later on in the course. So there are a whole bunch of methods that you can use with strings, and really this help on a given class applies to any type of object you encounter in Python, not just strings. This is just an example. Now, if you're in a Jupyter notebook, you can also use the tab key to see what's available. So if we do s1 dot and then tab, this will give us a list of all of the functions and all of the data as well, all of the variables, but there are none in this case, they're all functions. But we can see all of the things we can do with this string. So for example, we could do s1.lower, and that's not going to be very exciting because it's already all in lowercase, but this does the opposite of this s1.upper and converts everything to lowercase. Now, another important thing to know about strings is that there is a type of string called an F string, and an F string is denoted by literally the letter F in front of a string. I'm assuming the F stands for format. And these are a simple way to format text introduced in Python 3.6. So they've been around for a while now, and they're a convenient and easy to use way of putting data or running Python statements inside of a string. So for example, we have this F string. It's easy to format text with F strings, which were added in Python version number. And so this text in curly braces is text that Python is actually going to execute. This is Python code inside of our string, and so it's going to print the value of version number. So if I go ahead and run this, it's easy to format text with F strings, which were added in Python 3.6. So this text here has actually replaced this in the string because it's in curly braces. Now, this is actually a Python statement, so I could do something like multiply this by 2, and it's going to execute that. Of course, this is not a true statement anymore, but you can put anything in these curly braces, and Python will run it. So this is also useful for formatting strings like this. This is an example where we say I am a blank at blank, where we fill in the blanks with role and organization. So go ahead and change this if you'd like. I'll change this to employee. I am an employee at the University of Utah. And so that will print out this text here by executing the Python code inside of the curly braces of the F string. And as I mentioned, any Python expression can appear within these curly braces. So you can call functions, you can use operators, and so on. So these are very flexible and very powerful.